Hey Ringside crew, welcome to the internationally known Dudes at Ringside podcast. And now here's your host, Joe, Panther the Third.
Hey there Ringside crew, and welcome to another episode of the internationally known Dudes at Ringside podcast. I'm your host, Joe Panther the Third. And man, once again, I'm going to welcome you and do another episode with a UK wrestler that I'm so happy and honored to have him on the podcast. Let's give a warm Dudes at Ringside welcome to JJ Gale. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Joe Panther III. Pleasure to be here.
Yes. So, if my internationally known audience is not familiar with you, and why would they not be, introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my name is JJ Gale. I'm the heart and soul of British wrestling. So if you're a fan of British wrestling, you should know who I am. If not, get to know who I am. I've had a huge year this year. I feel like it's been a breakout year. And it's just going to keep riding onwards and upwards from here. So if you don't know the name, I'm sure you will soon. You can find me across lots of different UK promotions, predominantly RevPro. As we record this, last night I was there, had a pretty big match with Zack Sabre Jr. And roughly around the time this comes out, I should be live at the 229 in London. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
Wow. So, JJ, who trained you?
Cool. Right, we're throwing it right back. So I first trained at a school in Gloucester in the United Kingdom, in England, at a place called Evolution Wrestling. And this was back in 2015. I first started. I was only 16 years old. And I grew up a childhood wrestling fan. Watched it since I was 6-7 years old. And it was something I'd always wanted to get into. Well, since the age of about 13, I think that's when I kind of started thinking this is potentially a career I'd like to pursue. So I searched around. I looked for the closest wrestling school to me, and I came across this one. And thankfully, my parents were super supportive of me pursuing this, and they'd kind of take turns every other week driving me up to this school, which was about 2.5 hours away from where we lived, which is right down on the southwest coast of England. And I'd go maybe twice a month for like 4-hour sessions, and that's where I learned to bump, lock up, and sort of all the basics. So we started there, and I've trained at various places since, but that's kind of where I started out, Evolution Wrestling in Gloucester.
Awesome. So, when you stepped foot the first time in your training facility that you did way back then, way back in the day, what were your energy? What were you thinking the first time you sat down?
I think I was excited, man. I mean, like I said, I've watched wrestling since I was about 7 years old, I'd say. The first year I remember following wrestling, which was, like most of us, was WWE. The first thing I was exposed to was in 2006. So I remember Ray winning the Rumble, WrestleMania 22, Edge spearing Foley through the table on fire, all that good stuff. That was my first main year. So I've been watching wrestling since then. And like a lot of us wrestling fans growing up, I took any opportunity to wrestle, whether it's cuddly toys in my room when I'm younger, as I'm getting a bit older, my brother in the backyard on the trampoline or upstairs. Even had a couple matches with my dad where he'd dress up and put on this whole gimmicked attire and stuff. So like my family were always super supportive, but I took any opportunity I could, mates, everything on the school playground. Probably got a few detentions for, a couple suplexes on the school field, but I took any opportunity I could to wrestle. And it just sort of got to that natural part of my career where I felt like or natural part of my life where I felt like it's time to maybe pursue this properly and learn how to do this properly and stop sort of teaching myself. So when I finally got inside that training school for the first time, I was kind of in awe, to be honest, because the first time I'd been up close to a wrestling ring and I could get inside it, and you get quite desensitized to it when you're doing it week in, week out, training and doing shows, and you're just thinking like, what's next? But yeah, those first few times just stepping through the ropes was like the coolest thing, and like feeling what a ring felt like it was always this mystery to me as a wrestling fan. Was what is a wrestling ring? Like, you hear it's like a trampoline, you hear it's like a concrete floor, what's it actually like. It's definitely not like a trampoline, I can say that. But yeah, it's just definitely excitement and awe, I think, the first time getting inside the ring.
Awesome. So let's fast forward a little bit. What was your energy like the first time? What your energy the first time, and what was your very first music you ever did when you first time you ever stepped through the curtains to become a professional wrestler?
Nice one. So my energy and feelings before going out for my first match was absolutely terrified. It's but also excited. It was a nervous but excited energy, but probably a lot more nervous than excited because I just didn't want to mess up. Obviously, it was in a little community hall, I guess, a little social club hall we call it here in the UK. I don't know if you've got similar things out in the US. And it's just a ring in the middle of a venue that probably had 150, 200 people at most, which isn't bad for a first match, to be honest. It's a trainee show, and decked out in my gear that I've got, which was probably one of the best on the show, to be honest. Most people are there in their sort of baggy training shorts and knee pads and shooter shoes, whereas I've managed to find myself some spandex and kick pads. So I'm decked out, I'm stick thin and ready to go. And the first music I ever had was Jump by Van Halen, which I think is a pretty good choice.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Love Van Halen. Van Halen's the shit, man.
Yeah, and that's a tune, right? You can't go wrong with that. And I think after that, I found like a jazzed up version, like a remix version, which is a little bit more modernized. So I started using that for a little bit. But yeah, Van Halen Jump was my first music. So definitely got the crowd popping.
So what is like your normal week of a wrestling show like? Like workout slash like what are you like eating? Like what are you calling your opponent? Do you guys talk and stuff like that?
I mean, I'd say typically if there's a match coming up at the end of the week, yeah, I'm big on my training in the gym. I think it's an important part of being a pro wrestler is looking the part and also being able to be safe in the ring, to look after yourself and your opponent to make sure no one's getting hurt or you're not being unsafe. And I think being physically fit, being able to keep up with the pace of a match, and keep your opponent safe, super important. So I'm usually training about 5 days a week in the gym. Sort of a muscle sort of bodybuilding sort of program, but also I think it's really important that people underestimate the cardio and conditioning side of pro wrestling because it's exhausting. I think before I started, that's something I didn't appreciate enough, just how tiring this thing is. So yeah, there's definitely a long week of training in the gym leading up to it, trying to eat right as well. They always say 80% diet, 20% training. So yeah, trying to get the right foods in and stuff. And I'm usually training at a wrestling training school a couple of times a week if possible as well, just to kind of keep those in-ring skills there, and just sort of stay on top of my game and sort of trial out new things. So I try and keep my head as into the game as possible. And then when it gets to show day, I'm ready to go. I'm tanned up. I've got my gear ready and set. The merch is packed up, and it's usually a travel day. I think we're quite lucky here in the UK, to be honest, because a bad travel day to a show is probably one of the worst ones I do is from Southampton, which is where I live in the south of England, up to Sheffield, which is in the north of England, which is about a 4 or 5 hour journey, depending on traffic. And that's like one of the worst ones here. Whereas I know there's guys out in the States that are doing like 12-hour round trips or more. We've got an Australian wrestler down with us at the moment, and I've been chatting to him about some of the crazy rides he's done. 13 hours there, do a show, 13 hours back. And I think we're lucky, really. We get a lot of eyes on the British scene and there's a lot of talent, and we also don't have to do those crazy car journeys. So we're lucky, really. But usually we're looking at about a 3-hour travel to a show, and then get there and sort of get things in motion, get the wheels in motion, decide what the promoter wants and how we see that going, and get everything ready. And then we go out there and hopefully smash it out of the park and get the desired response.
Awesome. So like, what is your favorite food of like all time?
Oh, what is my favorite food? That's a great question. We were talking offline, I think, about pizza just before we went live.
Yes.
I do love a good pizza. We've got a place here near where I live that does nice, freshly grilled pizza straight in front of you. So that's a very good faraway pizza. It's called. It's good stuff. But I'm a sweet tooth guy. As much as I say I try and eat the right things, I try and get my protein in and limit my fats and try and keep the physique and the conditioning for a wrestler. I've got a real big sweet tooth. I love chocolate. I can't lie. I'd say it's probably right up there. So it's my guilty pleasure. I'm a chocolate man.
Yeah, if you ever come back to PA, then you're definitely gonna have to go over to Hershey, PA, and go over to Hershey Park over there and get some real authentic Hershey stuff. You know, man.
Heck yeah, I'd love to. That sounds right up my street. Let's do it.
That park, even though they'll charge you an arm and a leg just to get a case of Hershey. There's a Hershey bar that they have, the big boy, the big Hershey bar. I don't know if you can get that back on the plane. They may have you're gonna have to eat that in the airport, sir.
How big are we talking? I mean,
I don't even. I think it's one of those big family size ones, a giant, like the giant candy bars, like they're like this big.
Yeah. Sign me up. I'm there for it.
I think it's like $20 because I know my old job around the holidays, they used to sell the big, huge the Rice Krispie treat. So it's a giant. So it's about like this big, and it's just a Rice Krispie treat. And I'm like, all I can think is if you eat that freaking Rice Krispie treat, Joe, you will get so bad diarrhea. And I never wanted it. I'm like, no, I'm not eating that. Thing's gonna get me sick. Sugar in that and the Oreo.
The sugar here as well. You'll be off the walls after that, I'd imagine.
I'll be like this. I'll look like Louis Tully in Ghostbusters when they're like, "What's wrong with you, sir?"
Fantastic.
Did you sleep last night? I think so. Did you close your eyes? I think I did. No, you didn't. Ooh, JJ, did you get a chance to watch the Netflix special, The Wrestlers? And if you did, what did you think?
Do you know what? I haven't yet. I did listen to an interview that Al Snow did with Chris Jericho on his podcast, actually, where they were talking about it. And I've been meaning to check it out. And I think I've seen your clip here and there. But no, I haven't actually seen it. But I'd be really interested to. And you've reminded me, so maybe that's what I'll check out. Maybe that'd be my holiday view.
And Al Snow's also a former fan, guest on Dudes at Ringside. So now you have another reason to check it out. And absolutely. Also Al Snow, we've had on the Siren, the one of the girls that they called the Siren. Oh my gosh, there's quite a few people that have been in OVW that have been on Dudes at Ringside. So you never know if you get in contact with Al, I may see you doing your pose with the famous pose without the OVW in the background, because you never know. Things happen. Dudes at Ringside does help people get their name out there. So, Al, if you're watching, this guy.
I'll be checking out the documentary. Al. That's what I'll be doing.
This guy right here is something. He got something. So he got something there. So, who made your gear, JJ?
Cool. So, my current set was done by a guy called Adrian over here in the UK. He lives nearby. And yeah, I really like it, to be fair. It's been an evolution, the gear, of sort of figuring out what you want to get on it, how you want to express yourself as a wrestler through your gear. So Adrian made my most recent set of gear. I'm in the process of getting a new ring jacket made at the moment, which should hopefully be available for the start of the new year. I think my first sort of big showcase match I have, I'll be bringing that out. So that's going to be sort of an added layer to me and my persona and my act, and sort of, I think the more of these little things that you can add up, the more well-rounded your act is, and there's more for people to sort of latch onto. So I'm looking forward to debuting that. It's a real cool design I've got done from Bitter Chain, who does a lot of guys' stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. But before that, I've gone to all sorts of guys around here. There's a woman out here called Vic Stitch. She did my last set of trunks, which is sort of a red set. But yeah, Black Country Beast, another guy up in the Midlands in the UK that does some good gear. But you find yourself jumping around to whoever's kind of got the lowest sort of schedule in terms of creating stuff, because there's a lot of guys needing gear and there's maybe not so many people making it. But yeah, Adrian's done my most recent set.
Awesome. So JJ, if my fans want to buy any merch of yours, how can they find it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a Big Cartel store, jjgale.bigcartel.com. There's links to that in all of my socials, Instagram, X, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. So there'll be a link to all of that in my bio and all of those. So yeah, unfortunately, we've sold out of this now. We've recently sold out.
That's a nice shirt here, JJ. That's a nice
one. Thank you, man. Yeah. So unfortunately, we've sold out. So you won't be able to get that one, but we may do a redesign, a reprint. But there's definitely going to be a new design coming in the new year. There's 8x10s and there's new 8x10s and new signed prints coming out in the new year as well, more updated ones. And there's a couple other little gimmicks on there. So yeah, please check it out. And if there's anything you want, let's get it going.
Awesome. So before we go, if there's any kids that are watching, hey guys, if they wanted to get into the wrestling business, what kind of advice would you give them?
I'd say you've got to have a passion for this. I think, you know, I think we're in a different time now. I'm sure if you're talking to someone like Al Snow, when he broke in, it was very much a protected business, and you had to find your way in, and you had to maybe, you know, pay your dues by getting the shit kicked out of you to actually be welcomed in before maybe they smartened you up to what the business was all about. But these days, it's quite easy for someone to maybe go to a training school and give it a go and do it as a hobby. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. But I think if you're really serious about getting into this as a profession, making it a full-time living, or even just being as busy as you can as an independent wrestler, then you've got to have that passion for it. Because as fun as it is, there's a lot of things that suck about it. Whether it's the long drives, maybe it's the way your body feels after a match the next day. I mean, like I said, I went head to head with Zack Sabre Jr. last night, and as everyone knows, he kicks and hits hard, and I'm feeling it today. So I think if you don't have that passion to enjoy what you've done and be excited for what the next thing is, then these things are going to add up. So I think if you've got that passion, harness it, keep it, be respectful, listen. If there's people in there in that you come across in the industry that have been doing it longer than you, then just be a sponge and listen to what they're saying and get as much as you can from them. I think the old saying is mouth shut, ears open, and just get as much advice as you can. I mean, this is a sport, an art form where you learn from the people above you, and you just take these bits of advice that people have got from people that have been doing it before them. And it's just years and years, this domino effect of advice and lessons learned in the business that gets passed down. So just learn and listen as much as you can, and have fun and be creative, and don't be afraid to express yourself. And work hard. You got to work hard.
Awesome. JJ, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm so thankful that you're helping me celebrate the 4-year anniversary of Dudes at Ringside podcast, because if it wasn't for, I would say, you're actually my first guest in the UK come on the podcast for 2024. So it's glad to have you on, and you open the door for the UK countries. Please tell your wrestling friends about the podcast. It really helps me, and it keeps the internationally known Dudes at Ringside podcast name over in the UK and keeps it bright. So I'm Joe Panther III.
I'm JJ Gale.
And we will catch you in the next one. Have a good night, everybody. And